guest, Dr. Clifford Hazel from Angelic Ministries, to speak for our self-discovery class. You're welcome.
I'm glad to be here this afternoon. This is a little surprise to me to be here today. A journey 50 years ago took me to London, England, and to my surprise, I was amazed to learn many things that I learned about our people. I learned about how ignorant we are as a people. I learned how the white man had control over us as a people. I learned the million-man march didn't work. The million-girl march didn't work. The million-child marches didn't work, and none of it's going to work. Because the European used a tool, and we are unfamiliar with the tool. For some of you that were there, I got my dates mixed up, and when they had the Million-Man March, I was speaking to 100 successful black businessmen, so it conflicted with me going to Washington. About 40 people hit my house after the march, and they were gung-ho, and we're going to do this, and finally we've all got together, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do the other. So after a long time, they said, "You're not saying anything." I said, "Well, I don't have anything to say." And they prompted me, "So you ain't going to do nothing." I said, "A guy sold some pies and newspapers and bottled water. Guy sold some magazines, but you and the March on Washington is not going to accomplish anything." And everybody was upset, as you are upset, and looking at me in amazement. But in England, I learned spiritual things. I learned that the March on Washington, every one of the spotter pots, the toilets, were in line with the planets. I learned that the crescent, the moon was not turned away from you, the moon was turned towards you. I learned that the European had talismans, and they placed them underneath the seats. And everything that we attempted to do was grounded. The march in Philadelphia was unsuccessful because you marched in a straight line. You're never going to be successful because you have to walk clockwise. What happens in the atmosphere when something is round? What happens when a comet is not round? Out of control. So you have to do things clockwise. I'm going to get back to England, but I want to lay some foundation for you. I learned about illness. One of the reasons for illness is you've got many souls. No such thing as one soul. You got many souls. And many times the mind will play with the soul. That's why parts of the body get sick. It happens here. It happens with not understanding the plight of the soul. These were tools, and they were knowledge imparted to me by the European because I was no threat to him. I was no threat to him. But their science is used against you even today. I can look at the news and tell you what's going to happen, whether or not whatever they're doing is going to be successful or unsuccessful. Because you're controlled. It's a massive control system dealing with the mind. CIA projects you through the mind control. Soul control. Because we've been programmed to receive the concept of one soul. Why one? If it was given to us by the Creator, why does it have to be one? This is why we focus many times on the wrong thing. To walk through walls is not a trick. It happens here. It's not to be done to entertain you. It's for a purpose. To transmute from mortality to immortality. It's not a trick. It has to have a purpose. In the science of the spiritual world, we leave from one plane and go to another plane. This is why we have been trained not to even think on this. I happen to be in Massapequa, New York, doing an exorcism for Michael Bay, when he saw a spirit run through the wall, and we were below ground. And I happened to have a robe on at that time, and he grabbed me from behind, and they got a little hook on it. And when you pull that thing from behind, it almost chokes you to death. But he said, did you see that? And I said, yes, I saw it. I said, but I want you to look over here. I had 13 candles in a circle and a black candle in the center. And the one in the center said, and it went out and smoke came up. I said, did you see that? Well, the house was clear. But that night about 3 o'clock in the morning, he took me to a large Jewish synagogue. And from that synagogue, there were some white limousines. And we followed the limousines to the graveyard. The Jews have a ceremony called happy visiting. It means that they go to the grave of their ancestors and they pitch tents and they have food and they have liquor and they have a little bit of everything for the grave, for the spirit of the deceased person. I have found out in over 60 years, the main problem that we have is we don't honor our ancestors.
Right.
That's the main problem that we have. We become disconnected and disassociated with our ancestors. I'm not going to ask for the hands of the people in here who have had relatives that are on the other side. In the last 30 days, they haven't been to the grave. The last year, they haven't been to the grave. But there is a connection. This is why you're disconnected. The connection is linking with your ancestral relatives. One of the great things that happen is that people who love you in this life, when they transmute, they don't love you any less. They're on a higher plane. And by being on a higher plane, they're in a position to do things for you. And isn't it funny that in Catholicism, that we pray to St. Jude, and on our way here we saw St. Christopher on a building. But none of us have our ancestral relatives that we seek to communicate with. When they're gone, they're gone. We don't communicate. And that disassociation is the thing that causes us to suffer so much on the earth plane. Yes, I was in a monastery 10 years. I never saw a woman in 10 years. You don't touch this. No embracing it. You got big sleeves and you keep your hand under your sleeve. And you don't talk. There's no speech there. The only thing that happens is after chapel in the morning you have breakfast and then you're on your various job assignments. But they teach a master science. And that science is able to keep not only races but nations in order. I was telling my son Alameen on the way here that they were passing a law, the British Parliament was passing a law, and Father Abbey says it will never get passed. And yet everybody favored the passing of a taxation on the Abbey, but it never got off the ground because they use spiritual power.
Right.
We use all power but spiritual power.
And who's Father Abbey?
Father Abbey was the director of the Divine Abbey, and one of my teachers was Master Lo Lee. And I happened to ask him one time, I said, Master, how old are you? And he says, do you mean in earth years? I didn't know any other years but earth years. And I said, yes. He said about 257. I talked to Oswald Melroy Williams from Jamaica. They affectionately call him Daddy Roy. And he went to the Abbey in 1937. And he was telling me, he was giving me a description of Lo Lee, and the description he gave me, he hasn't changed since that time. But these are sciences, in Tibet it's the same thing with the Tibetan monks, they don't change. And the funny thing, they can prostrate themselves and sit down, and they just transpire. And they pick them up and they put them in great big jars. You might say vases, but they're jars. And 200 years later, without any embalming, they take them out and they haven't decayed. These are sciences. Sciences that you learn. There's no miracle. There's no such thing as a miracle. It's a science. And once you learn these sciences, you can bring about miracles. We had a miracle a few days ago.
Yes, we did.
Someone called me a few days ago. And they told me a certain situation. I said, well, I don't have time to talk to you right now. I've got to go to my altar. How many of you in here have an altar? So those that don't have an altar, we have problems. We have problems. You can pray to the Creator. I don't care what you call it. It's not important. We focus so much on names. Names are not important. What was his name 800 million years ago? I have many friends of mine who are Jehovah's Witnesses, and many of them are in other religions where they focus so much on names. Creator's so great that he doesn't have one name. Right. One name does not describe him or her. Because there's a female side of the Creator. I'm fascinated with Genesis. I think it's 6:6. I'm not too sure. It says, and God created Adam and Eve. And he said he called both of them Adam. It was Adam that called her Eve. Creator never called her Eve. That's in your book. But nevertheless, in these sciences, there's a connection with the Creator. And that's the purpose of getting a talisman, getting a tool. How many of you have talisman?
What is it?
How many of you have tools? That's good.
She wants to know what's a talisman.
A talisman is an item that's been especially fixed for you to do various things with. It's an object that's been specially fixed. It could be out of silver, gold, it could be out of leather, it could be out of paper, but it's a specially fixed item for you to do certain things with. And there are all kinds. There are love talismans. Sisters should be interested in that. There are love talisman, there are healing talisman, there are health talisman, there are court talisman. And by the way, if I go to court with you, when I walk out, you walk out. I don't care what the case is. And I'm the only person you will ever meet who might refer to themselves as a spiritualist or a person of God. I give a guarantee. You can read hands, you can read crystal balls, and you can come with a lot of mojo stuff, but I give a guarantee. And people who know me know that when I say something's going to happen, it happens in a way, mainly because I was taught a science. It's not because I don't talk loud. Many people say, I talk loud, and there's a purpose for it. I'm hard of hearing in one ear. That's why I talk loud. Many people say he doesn't stand erect. Well, I don't, because I broke my back in 3 places in '77. I don't stand erect. But they can never say I don't deliver. You can say anything you want to say, but you can't say I don't deliver. It's not because I'm great. It was because I graduated from the University of Michigan with 2 degrees in 1957. But a white boy saw something in me. I don't know it to this day what he saw. And he says, I'm going to give you a free trip to England. And at that time, I was 180 pounds. I had all of my teeth. I had a great big bush, and I was muscular. So, and I could box a little bit. I can't do it too much now. I could box. And I said, wait a minute, I don't play that. He said, no, it's not like that. And I thought about 5 days of a free trip. You turn around and see the tower in England, the changing of the guards. You see Buckingham Palace, and you see where the alleged Sherlock Holmes created Piccadilly Square, and you see various things. I went on a sightseeing trip. But I went to the Abbey, and to my amazement, one of the monks gave me 20 pages, and I read it. And the 20 pages went back to when I was 7 years old. And the last pages went back to when I left England, when I left Detroit to go to England. And only what was on those papers God could have known. And they told me to throw it in the fireplace. And I threw it in the fireplace. And I was a young Baptist preacher at C.O. Franklin's church, New Bethel Baptist Church. I remember Rita when she was banging on the piano, trying to play the piano when Winona Carr was trying to teach you how to play the piano. And I was anxious to get back to the United States. And they gave me a blue cup and they told me to pray in the cup. Now I'm a fiery Baptist preacher with a robe. I knew how to get the money. Now you all are religious, and I will not step on that. But the name of the game is how to get the money. You know, you can be a little black Baptist preacher, and you wipe the front of your head, and you got a bald head, and sweat running down the bald head, and you can stomp, and you can use elocution, you can use a little bit of scripture, and you can use everyday events, which many of your televangelists do that. It's a science. It's a science of how to get people to be emotional. And when you're emotional, you sow seeds. And seeds is money where the head man can ride in a $2.5 million jet. You don't need no $2.5 million jet, you know. And you can have 200 suits and take abroad with you. But when you're a spirit being, you do what one of the creators said. He said, when you travel with one garment. You know, one set of clothing. But not to hold the class too long, but in this abbey, you learn various sciences. One of the sciences to go inside of you. Everything you want in Philadelphia is inside of you. Everything. Because it's here. There's a passage in the New Testament that says, whatsoever a man thinketh, so is he. Okay, I left a situation about 3 weeks ago where a lady was diagnosed with breast cancer. Alameen can tell you, before we left Baltimore, John Hopkins says she doesn't have breast cancer. Because breast cancer is in the soul that's in here. If you think that you're sick, you're going to be sick. This morning, I was surprised. I was supposed to meet Alameen at 12:01 today. At least that's what we were told. And in the morning time, it was about 20 after 6, I had finished my prayer. And he says, I called him. I said, where are you? He said, I'm about 20 minutes away from you. I said, you got to be kidding. So when he pulled up to my house, I had the door wide open, and I was sitting on the steps waiting for him. My point in telling you that is this. You're going to have a bad day tomorrow because you think you're going to have a bad day. I don't have bad days. Every day is a wonderful day.
I heard that.
Because it's in me.
I heard that.
The day doesn't project me. I project the day.
That's right, Pop.
You're worried about the boss. You can stop him from coming to work. All you got to do is deal with the 37th Psalm, and he won't show up. And it'd be his best day to illustrate a program. You can deal with the Psalms and project what you desire to project. That's why it's a psalm for everything. You not only kill your enemies, you can kill his family. Maybe I shouldn't tell you that, but oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And that's the mistake I find in the Christian church. They have no recourse against enemies that attack them. They use the projection of turn the other cheek. I'm not praying for nobody out to destroy me. I'm not going to do it. Because it is not logical. I have a right to defend myself. What is the first law of nature?
Self-preservation.
Preservation. So if I use that law and anybody comes against me, I'll turn the 109th Psalm against them. And as a way of turning it against them, not only them, but their seed and their seed's seed. There was a movie one time with Basil Rathbone in it. It was called The Hounds of Baskerville. And in that movie, many people didn't know that the 109th Psalm was used. That's why the curse lasted for generations. You have a right to defend yourself. I just want to get into the science of the soul. There are two ways of thought. I'm very interested in this because there are geographical ways of thinking. In America, you are taught to think one way. But you can go to another country and you're trained to think another way. Coming through Philadelphia, I don't know Philadelphia very well. We came through the Puerto Rican.
Yes.
We came through that area. And I was very fascinated because of a question I asked some of my Eastern Star sisters. How many nations in the world have stars on their flag? Well, you can easily find out by going on the internet. But when you find the nations who have stars on their flag, what does that allude to? And you can go on the internet and you can find out what it alludes to. And then when you find out what it alludes to, you have to figure out how can you use what it alludes to in your everyday life, especially your prosperity. And I look upon prosperity as a dollar sign.
Yes, sir.
And I don't focus too much on that or money. I don't focus very much on that. But you need finance to exist on this earth plane. You need money to substantiate yourself on the airplane if you want to live comfortably. If you want to live comfortably. It requires finance. But how do you acquire finance? Some time ago I was visiting a friend, and he happens to be an instructor at the unemployment agency. And he pointed a couple things out to me. He pointed two people out to me who have PhDs, but they're unemployed. We were taught as children, at least I was taught, get a good education and you won't have to worry about anything. Keep your mouth closed and don't talk back to white people. And when you're 65 years old, you can get that check and sit on the front porch and drink mint julep in your rocking chair. But it doesn't work. Nowadays, when you're 65, you need to get yourself a part-time job. So that philosophy doesn't work. But the science of acquiring wealth works. It works. Science of getting a new car. I don't know how many of you need a new car, but it works. When you go into the car lot, and you put your hand on the car, it works. We were in a bakery, and the people were upset. They were Jewish people. They were upset because they looked at this on me and they looked at it on him. And they couldn't help themselves. One of them come over there and talk. What is this? What does it mean? What are y'all into? So I asked him, I said, have you ever seen it on an ambulance? You ever seen it on a fire engine? Emergency vehicle? A helicopter? On top of a hospital? Doctors wear it on the label? What does it mean? What does it allude to? And what can you do with it? There's no need of wearing something you can't. They talked about his shirt, some team. But what does it mean if you can't do anything with it? And those are the things that we have to learn as a people. It's not one individual. It's these sciences are used against us as a people. Nobody have anything personally against you. It's your people. They keep down a whole race of people. Why? Because we don't know these sciences. This is levitation is no great secret. You know, anybody can levitate. But where do you start to levitate? In here. In the mind. They're still trying to figure out an ancient mystery with the pyramids of Giza. And last time I was there in '77, I was talking to one of the archaeologists, and everybody was looking for ropes. They didn't have no ropes. Everybody was looking for levees to pull the 70-ton block up, a levee. And they didn't have wood. They didn't have it then, they don't have it now. But according to Isaiah, they built a pyramid in the center of the earth when they built the pyramids of Giza. And I just happened to drop it. You know, sometimes you tease people. I said, they did it here. Ain't nobody come from no outer space. You can look at the pyramids from A to Z, all the symbology, all the science. But nobody came from another planet to do this. They did it here. But you got to do it. You got to do it here. And you'll learn through Brother Shema'yah and Sister Vonda, you'll learn how to do it here. I am not sick. We left my brother today before we came here. He has his toe, his big toe and 3 of his other toes cut off. He's stubborn, diabetic, and he eats all the things he's not supposed to eat. And he's got cholesterol and everything, and he got gangrene in his foot, and it entered in his whole body, and they gave him 3 pints of blood, and he's recuperating very slowly. Matter of fact, this morning when we went there, he was in physical therapy. We went to physical therapy, stayed about 10 or 15 minutes. We left and took care of some errands, and we came back. He was still in physical therapy, but when he came out, we went to his room and talked to him. And I looked at my mother's son, and I saw the problem. The problem was, he thought he was sick. The lady was giving out, what was those shots? The lady was giving out flu shots. I haven't had a flu shot in my life. I'm not going to let anybody poison me to make me well. I'm not going to do that. And I might not catch the flu, but the bacteria could do something to something else. Because I'm not sick. I'm not going to be sick. I'm not going to allow myself to think that I'm sick. It might be normal to catch a cold, but you're not sick. So in the science of the mind, I know Brother Shema'yah and Sister Vonda will teach you. You are what you think. You think you're having a hard day, you're having a hard day. You think you can't control your man, then you're not thinking in the right direction. You can control him all right. You can control him all right. It all depends on what you think. And so far as the lady's concerned, on Thursday when he gets paid, he can't wait to get home. So these are the type of things that we have to do. We have to think differently. And we have to learn the science that the enemy uses against us. You are programmed by TV. It came out on my way here. It said that there were millions and millions of gallons of oil that were leaked in the Gulf, but the Obama administration kept it away from the people. Sometimes you have to control the people because they'll panic. So you use TV to control people to what they think. It's so different in the thought pattern in the Philippines and Jamaica, Trinidad, Egypt, Africa. It's the thinking pattern. But I find Americans think TV, whatever TV says, but you're trained to think. And you think European. Isn't it funny that if a brother tells us something, it's hard for us to accept it. But if Whitey Poo tells us, we'll accept it. And that's the syndrome when we've been programmed to. We don't trust one another because we've been indoctrinated with that. Then we have the idea that when we all get together, it's foolishness. We're never all going to get together. All of them are not together. It only takes one to stand firm, do what he's going to do. It only takes one leader. You don't need 100 leaders. Leaders get jealous of one another. And you find out if you become successful, everybody wants to jump in front of the bandwagon. Everybody wants to get credit. It only takes one of us to stand up and do anything. One that's not afraid. And when you're able to transmute, you find out death is a friend. Death is not your enemy. Death is a deliverer. That's why it's nothing to fear death. It's a comforter. And you don't stop existing just because they lay you in a cemetery. You begin to live. And I'm not talking about pie in the sky and all this kind of stuff. If I've got to live unpleasantly on the earth to get to some place with streets of gold, what is gold going to do in the afterlife? So ridiculous. King Tut's exhibit, Cleopatra's exhibit. After you're dead, people rob you. They take your possessions. So what good is that? Nevertheless, I just want to conclude by telling you, this is a science. No miracle. There's no such thing as a miracle. It's a science. I think of the Wright brothers. The man was trying to learn to fly. And I think back to the 15th century. If you flew a kite, you were practicing witchcraft, flying a kite. And people would kill you because they thought you were practicing unknown science. But it was science that you were practicing. On the way here, we passed, what was it, airport? We passed the Philadelphia airport, and as we looked out, we were talking about flying. I love to fly. If I want to cross the street, I want an airplane, I want to fly over because I enjoy flying so much. But flying isn't a miracle. It's a science. We crossed this bridge. When I'm in New York, I crossed the Verrazano Bridge, and we're driving about 55 miles an hour, and I say, if Moses could only see me now. It was a miracle. The Red Sea was a miracle. But obviously they might have got wet, or the shoes wet or something like that. I want to cross at 55 miles an hour and didn't get wet. These things are not miracles. They're just sciences. Healing isn't a miracle. It's a science. It's a science. Higher creator, I don't question that. I'm not going to question a higher creator. But what would the higher creator do if you didn't want to cooperate? It requires you to cooperate with the creator. He's not going to force you to do something that you don't want to do. And all the religions of the world, they don't operate that way. He might coach you, but he ain't going to force you. I'm going to conclude by saying, does anybody know why Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh? Does anybody know why Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh? Pop up like popcorn. Talk to me like popcorn. Just pop up.
They didn't like the people.
He didn't want to warn the people? He didn't like the people? Why?
I don't know, he had some type of beef or what? Prejudice against
Prejudice, you say? Why?
He didn't have any faith in his mission.
They were black people.
Oh.
And he was a racist. That's why. Go to your biblical dictionary and find out what they were. Ninevehite. Find out what they were. He was a bigot. He was a racist. Told the I ain't going down there with them. You know. When I left, just before I left England, Father Abbey said, some of the things that you learn here, I want you to take back to your people. And at that particular time, I had been living with people from all over the world, and I never thought that I was an Asiatic. I thought I was a brother among all these races of people. He says, take it back to your people. And we often joke now about it. I wish he had sent me to my people. I wish he had sent me to any other people but my people. Because it's difficult dealing with my people. But Jonah was a racist. He was a bigot. And the Creator had to spank him some to get him to do what he sent him to do. And in dealing through hundreds of religious books, I find out that people are just people. And I don't equate the European for me. He wants food, shelter, and clothing. He wants protection for himself and his relatives. He wants security. I only question the way he downs other people in order to get what he wants. So anytime I'm talking, I always say, and many the people here that know me, I say, are there any questions, comments, corrections, or criticisms? Because criticism can be constructive and it can be good. And someone can always teach you something no matter how many degrees you have. So I welcome even criticism. My brother.
I've heard the term Asiatic. Then there's the African word comes from Roman, I guess, right? But I don't want to have a
Roman and Greek.
Roman Greek, right? Okay. But I don't want to have a problem calling myself brother, Asiatic, black, or African, or whatever, right? I am what I am. So what is the problem with that word, Asiatic, or Christian or whatever? What's the problem with that?
I don't find any problem with the word, but a great deal of times you have to be able to allude to the group that you're talking to. Among the people that I deal with, the word Asiatic engulfs all African people or people of African descendancy. I wonder when we stopped being colored and we became black. I wonder when we stopped being a Negro. I wonder when all these various changes come in, and why they came in and when they came in. But mostly groups that I speak to that have a combination of African Americans or either people from Africa, and that's another thing. There were black people in the United States 10,000 years before 1611. So we are divided, but it's just a classic word used. If you want to say people of Africa descendancy, that's fine.
Let's say I want to use the word before African. It's called African by the Europeans. What would I call myself? What would you call it?
Well, there is one thing that historically, most of the people, and I had on the way here, we passed a place that Brother Alameen pointed out to me. Most of the people were Moors.
Well, that's a Roman word too.
No, it's not a Roman word. It's not a Roman word. It's a Spanish word.
Spanish law, European.
No, it was a Spanish word. It's very funny. You know, a lot of things leak out in fiction, but if you look at the movie Kunta Kinte, if you look at that movie, there's one part of the movie where he calls himself a Moor. Just one part of the movie. And most of the people from Africa were Muslims. You have to go into the early study of the religion of people. I think it was the graveyard you were telling me about.
Yes, that they found when they were putting the foundation in for the new casino on Gore Avenue.
And they dug up people that had...
1,300 years from Virginia.
This is right here in your own city. And the clothing they were wearing...
Red and green.
Red and green clothing. I'm a North Carolinian, and I came from a little town that's roughly about maybe 2 miles wide and 5 miles long. You can go through the town, and if you're driving 10 miles an hour, you can go through the cut town in maybe 2 or 3 minutes. But in 1861, there were a group of people who wore turned up shoes, and they wore big blousy green pants, and they wore red dress, and they wore fezzes. And the most unusual thing about it is they had knives on rubber bands, and they would throw these knives and retrieve them. They would go out in the water and they would practice by throwing these knives and retrieving these knives. Now, in North Carolina, my grandfather was a physician, and I used to get in his buggy with him and as a little boy, and he would take me to different places. And I've seen him, the first time in my life I ever saw a baby delivered, it was in a white person's house. But we couldn't go to the front door. We had to go to the back of the house to go in for him to do this. And the most outstanding thing that two outstanding things I remember about my grandfather is that you could not call him black. He went off when you said that to him. And he always referred to himself as a Moor. And the second thing that I remember is that when the Masons buried him, I was a young boy and I saw these uniforms, and you're a child, you turn out by uniforms and swords because you want a sword battle and everything. But when they buried him, the men took their glove off their right hand and threw it in the grave. And I wondered why that was, and they took the spruce of acacia and they threw it in the grave. But they took each one of them took a shovel and they built a little round hill on top of his grave. And I always wondered what that was all about. But I had another uncle, his name was Gold, they called him Uncle Gold, and he was from Delaware. And he always referred to himself as a Moor from Delaware. And later in the years in my life, I invested in history of the Moors and the Indians of Delaware. But when we came to America, if you would trace your history, you'll find out that many of the people from Africa referred to themselves as Moors. And the religion of the people at that time was Islam. This is history. You can refute and you can disagree with me, but you can't argue with history. This was one of the main things that Malcolm had. Malcolm, when he brought things out to people, it was historical. So is there any, I'm taking up too much of your time.
No, we have another 45 minutes to go.
Okay.
And okay.
My brother.
The Mayan calendar means that in less than 2 years from now, the year 2012, and nobody seems to know why. Do you have any expectation that...
Foolishness. Now you asked my opinion. It's foolishness. Men have been predicting the end of the world since the world began.
That's right. It's
Well, not that, it's a prediction of them.
Why are the Mayans so brilliant? Because they studied astronomy and astrology? Why are they so, why should you pay any more attention to that than to anything else? If the world is going to be destroyed, it's going to be destroyed by man. These people are fooling around while we're here at Temple University. There are people with plans to destroy the world. If it's anything, we got to watch these atomic weapons. Because if one is accidentally exploded, it's going to be a chain reaction. No food, no air, no water, no government. If you study the predictions of the Quakers, the Amish, you study the prediction of Joshua Smith, there have been hundreds of times people have been predicting the end of the world. The last time I visited Jerusalem, they had people walking around the street telling they were Jesus. And if the world comes to an end, what are you going to do? Or you're going to say, the Mayans were right. But isn't it funny that people will always give you a problem, but never give you a solution to the problem? If the polar axis is going to shift, and all the ice is going to come this way, and then this will become a region of plenty, what are you going to do? There have been many scares about the end of the world, even coming from the Mormons. History has always projected these things. Now, I'm not argumentative with anybody. You ask my opinion. My opinion is foolishness. They had all these sciences. They had all this knowledge. But they couldn't defeat 200 white men. The whole empire was destroyed by 200 jackasses looking for gold. They predicted that they were coming, but they didn't have the solution to stop them. And there's something when you got 350,000 people and 200 soldiers. They had all the intelligence, but they didn't know what a horse was. You'll often find people with a lot of knowledge but no solution. They could project the end of the world